purposes of this talk, one of the things we wanted to sort of walk through was really kind of, Onlive has been around for a while, and because of that we've got a lot of experience, we've done a lot of things over the last few years, and we've learned a lot of lessons, and for the last year and a half we've been applying those lessons to how we run the business, how we develop this, how we evolve, and how we take this forward. And we're now in a place where we're very confident about what we have, we're very confident about the industry as a whole, and a reflection of that is the people in this room, and a thank you to VGI as always for organising the conference, but just how many people now are looking at this and taking this forward, and the names in cloud gaming in all its forms that are really showing how we're driving and how we're evolving this part of the industry. But first I'm going to do a little bit of, despite that, we still see these random kind of news articles and these kinds of things every few weeks that just make you want to bang your head on the desk. And the latest one was, we can't do cloud gaming because it's going to cost 89 billion to do it. So thank you all, and it's been a lovely conference. It's a nice headline, but it was based off of data that was 5 years old, and it was based off of kind of the prospect that if one person can't have it, then nobody can have it. And it also made these assumptions that you have to have one particular technology in place, fibre to the home, before you can even start to think about cloud gaming. And we all know that's not true. We've all been doing this for long enough that we have lots of data, we have lots of users, we have lots of people building and infrastructure going up that is making this happen today. But an interesting sort of aside of that is, at the same time that this article came out, an organisation called GigU published a separate, one of their latest reports about what the state of fibre to the home is. And that in itself is interesting because behind it you can see a speed test. And just after the report that was referenced was published, Google sent out an RFP saying, please, we'd like to start building out fibre to communities. And we'd like to start looking at how we improve and drive network infrastructure. And the goal for that was not so much that everyone gets a gigabit coming into their home, nice as that would be, but it's really the rising tide lifts all ships approach. And it's the idea that if we're going to take large numbers of people and give them access to fibre, everything else is going to lift with it. And that's really what's happened. And as we've seen, and what we'll see over the next couple of slides, these are actually directly from the GigU report. I apologise for the slightly blurry nature of them, but back when Google said we're going to do this, all of the telcos explained why they couldn't possibly do it, and why there was no way they were going to put in that kind of infrastructure or accelerate building of fibre networks. We will not upgrade its network to provide gig because to do so would cost multiple billions. Nobody wants higher speeds, it's just a race. Well, all of those companies are now rolling out and deploying fibre networks. They're now moving to a point where not only are they competing against the places where Google has started to announce, but they're pushing in their own neighbourhoods, they're pushing into new environments. Comcast and Cox this week also just announced some big improvements, and they're pushing that as well. And so on the fibre to the home alone, what we're seeing is all of these new places that are getting access to insanely fast network speeds. And they're going to be the first that we see, and in fact Chattanooga has just been announced, I think, as the fastest place in the world for network performance. But while this is happening, and in the always in the bit of just talking about sort of the statistics and the growth and how we see the world growing, there's a good reason for this. We need to grow the broadband speeds, we need to grow the networks. And that's because of device proliferation. We all know about device proliferation. A lot of these are the kinds of slides that we see sort of at all of these conferences. But we're growing right now from a couple of years ago where a family would have a connected device to, in a few years, we're now talking about each person will have 6.6 devices on average that are connected. Right now I have a phone in my pocket, I have a Fitbit on my wrist, I'm going to have a smartwatch very soon, I have no doubt, I've got a laptop over there next to a tablet. We're already there, we're already getting to that point where all of these devices are connected. The expectation as all of these devices connect is that we also want access to whatever data we need, however we want it, wherever we deliver it to. And so we now see, as a byproduct of that, the growth of non-PC originated traffic. And that's not so much that the decline of the PC market as the incredible growth of all of the other markets around it and everything becoming a connected device. If we look at the power of these devices, we still see great deltas in what they're actually capable of doing and what we're actually capable of delivering. If you want the most powerful graphics today, you're still going to go to a desktop. You're going to go to NVIDIA and put in a Titan. You're going to go to Intel and put in one of the new 8-core Haswells. And you're going to have a blazing rig that runs at about 1.5 kilowatts and burns a whole pile of power and gives you 4K, and it will just look amazing. We want portability, so we have a laptop, we have smart notebooks, we have devices that are gradually, sort of as we go down the curve, the nature of physics and simply the size and the power they can run requires them to not be as powerful as the devices at the top end. We also see at the same time, on the right-hand side, the incredible taking advantage of all of that power. We see the games and just how they've grown in their expectations. If you deliver a brand new video card, the game developers are going to do their utmost to break that video card. If you deliver a brand new workstation card, then we're going to take advantage of that. And if you look at something like AutoCAD, which is listed up there, those are the minimum specs required. A minimum of 2 gigabytes of memory, sorry. Clock speed, which is a very bad measure nowadays, but clock speed of 3000. And that's what it recommends. If you actually want to run it properly, you generally need somewhere around 8 gigabytes of memory or 16 gigabytes of memory. You want to be on the much faster clock speeds, the highest end processors, multiple cores, and those GIAs, graphically intense applications, are still going to take all the power available to run them. And that's just not going to happen on a tablet or a smartphone. We're always going to be accelerating the application and the requirements for it. So, slight sort of to one side for just how things are building and how things are growing. We all know that things are moving to the cloud. We all know that data centers are an incredible part. The number here is just the number for construction as predicted for per year for new data center growth by 2020. Now, to put that in perspective, that same number around 2010 was around about 8 billion. So everything is coming with this. We're going to continue building, we're going to continue growing out. The reason we're going to continue growing out the data centers, and they're going to get bigger and bigger, is because we're moving to the cloud. And we're going to continue to take all of these devices that are connecting, whether it's switches, whether it's compute power, whether it's networks, those data centers will need to be built to support it. We're talking about 4 billion global internet users by 2018. Now, thank you to Cisco for their VNI reports. They're always insightful and they've always got loads of interesting data and stats on them. But again, you look at the growth from just last year, 2.5 billion to 4 billion in just a few years. 21 billion networked devices. And we talk about these numbers because we go to these conferences, and I don't think we really take in sort of how staggering that is. I can't even begin to picture what 21 billion networked devices might look like. Now, taking aside the let's everyone have fiber to the home, we know that's not something that's going to happen in the next 2-3 years. However, what we are seeing and the projections that we do care about when we talk about things like streaming, when we talk about things like cloud gaming, is what's the average fixed broadband going to be? What are people really going to have access to? Well, last year that was 16 megabits a second. In a couple of years, that's going to be 42 megabits a second. Now, I've seen this happening in real time. I moved back to the UK about 3 years ago, and when I moved back, I moved to about 15, 20 miles outside of London. It's a small village out there. And when I moved there, I got my service with BT. I had 16 megabits a second, which was the fastest package that they offered at the time. In the intervening 3 years, in all of the surrounding villages, they've updated their infrastructure. And over the course of those years, each year I got a new letter come through that would tell me that for no extra money, they're upping my speeds. My speed is now speed testing at 140 megabits a second. And that's in a village 25 miles outside of London, out of the centre. And I didn't do anything. I didn't request more speed. I didn't say, give me more power. That just happened. And that's what's happening to everyone. Connected TVs, something we are near and dear to our hearts. 13% of all network devices, 2.6 billion devices will be capable, TVs, capable of connecting to the network. Of which I believe the number projected for 4K is somewhere, 4K TVs alone is going to be somewhere around the 400 million. Now, we just announced with Philips yesterday, that's the kind of yet another device. 5-10 years ago, if you looked at connected TVs, why did you connect your TV? Why did you even care? And yet now, people want the TV, they may not want any of the other boxes around it. They want the device itself to be able to run all of the media, and they want it to be able to connect. They want it to get access to all of that media. And then another one that's near and dear to our hearts, IP video. 79% of traffic, of which we know that that traffic is going to include video games. It already includes video games, but it is going to be a significant part of the growth going forward for what IP traffic is in 2018. So what about performance? Well, we do a lot of benchmarking. We've, right from day one, we've had everyone tell us how this is impossible and can't be done. We have tens of millions of sessions that have been run on our service. We've had millions of users come through the service. We are very familiar. We have very deep-seated, deep-rooted analytics built into our platform. And we know everything about all of those sessions. We know what a fiber session looks like next to a DSL session. We know what a wireless looks like over a wired home connection. We know what LTE looks like. We know what 3G looks like. We have a huge amount of data out there, both on games and on enterprise. If it can be measured, we've measured it. And that's very important to the way we operate our business. Because as we develop and as we deliver these streams out to people, we want to give them the best possible experience they can get for the device they're connecting to. So one of the things we like to talk about is the benchmarking. We've spent a lot of time trying to do some real-world testing against all of the other available services that are out there. One of the things that is a little bit unusual about Onlive, we believe, is just how well we perform over the top. We're not on a managed network. We're not working with an ISP to deliver over a closed infrastructure to a set-top box that is delivered by that ISP. What we do goes over the network to any device. And the characteristics of that make everything harder. We can't predict when we're going to see packet drops. We can't predict the last mile or the routes you're going to take. We can't predict the device you're going to plug in and play on. And so we've had to build and architect our systems to manage around all of those pieces. And what we've spent a bunch of time doing is some real-world testing, real-world analysis, and that's how we believe we stack up. Now, if you're yellow, you can still play, but you're starting to see a lot of artifacting. You're starting to have problems on the network. It's maybe not going to be the best visual experience. If you're red, it's basically become unplayable. We perform well up to 8+, 9+% packet loss. And what we've seen is a lot of the other solutions out there, as soon as they get over the top, as soon as they're off a managed network, they simply can't perform in that world. Now, in the linear streaming world, we know that that's when you start to see the buffering. That's when you start to see the wait a second and we'll download a little bit more for you. In the games world, we don't have that luxury. So we've had to build, we've had to take advantage of every possible scenario and work out how to deal with that. When we look at how we stack up across different pieces, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's wired networks, and then we came to LTE, and LTE is still relatively young in its deployment, and there's a number of things going on there. But we work over LTE. We have no problems. We've been doing this. We've been testing it for the last couple of years as it rolls out. Our biggest problem with LTE is nothing to do with the networks. When you have a good LTE network, it has very low ping rates. It has very high network speed. What it has is just horrific data caps and horrible data packages associated with it. So again, as we move into this world where we start to drive more and more media over more and more networks, that's another thing that's going to have to change. We're going to have to change how we price and how we monetize these networks. Because you can't give someone a 25 gig network, a 25 meg network on their phone and then tell them that they can only use it for a couple of hours. So again, we will see the changes happen over the next few years. But we're very encouraged by the way we perform and how we're able to deliver games over those types of networks. LTE, by the way, is a great solution as we start to build out and as we look at other communities. Maybe you can't always run fiber out to a more remote location. You can't always run copper to everyone. And here's a way of getting a high-speed broadband that is low latency and is high speed without needing a wired connection all the time. So we have all of this technology. Why has this been such a challenge to get going initially? What were the things that were stopping cloud gaming really taking off? Well, the first piece was user adoption. How do you convince someone that cloud gaming is something they want? Economics and business models have been challenging. When cloud gaming first came about, we lived in a retail world. Cloud as a SKU, have we created just another platform? Is it interesting enough to want to cause people to even look at it? Had we created just another walled garden that was yet more development? So for the users, the question is, well, what's the ownership model? How do I take my game? Am I buying the game again? Is this just another copy? Is this yet the 5th time I've bought Doom? Is this just you trying to monetize the same things over and over and over? And if it's streamed, is it really mine? Do I own that content if you go away? Do I own that content if I want to run it somewhere else or run it under my terms? If it's on a managed network, what if I want to move to another network? What if I want to change my carrier? Have I lost it? What happened to all of my save data? Where are all of my friends? So we looked at that piece and we said, okay, let's throw that thinking away. Let's start to augment the other platforms. Let's work with the platforms that are out there and use the content and instead extend the reach. Give the users the content they already have, but now make it available in more places. And that extends to all aspects of that. That extends to, if you're playing multiplayer, you're playing with the same friends in the environment you've always played with. If you have a social network there, then you're talking to the same people. You're not creating yet another social network. It increases the reach of the existing platforms in a way that was never done before. All of a sudden, you're not tethered to that high-end device. It's nice to talk about in-home streaming. It's even nicer to talk about taking it down the coffee shop streaming or taking it over to your friend's house, traveling, going away for the weekend, playing somewhere else, while not having to change anything. So by making it a single version of the game, by syncing the saves to the cloud, by running instances of the games anywhere, what that's allowed us to do is bring portability in a way that's never been done before. You can sit at home, you can play the local copy, great. You've bought the game, it's a digital key, great, everyone's happy. But now you can take it with you and you can play somewhere else on the device that you happen to have in your pocket. So it's about complementing instead of making everything more difficult. It's about simplifying the offering. And for the user, this is great. The user doesn't have to think about this anymore. All they have to think about is this a benefit to me? Sure, okay, then I'll use it. If it isn't a benefit to them, then don't use it. They're not being forced to pay multiple times. For the industry, the problem was one of channel conflicts. It was one of, you're asking me to market twice to 2 different channels for the same game. And by the way, if they buy it over there, have I just cannibalized over there? We can't assume every user is going to buy multiple games. So all of a sudden, as a publisher, this doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. It's difficult to keep convincing. We know the best sales are with the new titles. We know the long tail is just a long tail that doesn't monetize so well. So what we wanted to do was get to a point where we're really giving advantage to those games that this does make sense with. If it's a brand new title that people want to engage with, and they want to engage all the time with, make it easy for them to do that. We had to make some changes in the way we brought games on board to do. We had to stop taking source code. We had to stop diving into the mechanics of it. We had to get it to a point where the game developers could give us a game, and within 24 hours it could be up and running on the service. And that's where we're at now. We don't want to play around with source code. We don't want to go through all of the rigmarole of making a whole load of changes to put it back into that walled garden. We want to take the game you've already built and just make it available in more places. From a control input standpoint, well, that puts the onus back on the developer to decide how you want to play with it. Is it a controller game, keyboard and mouse game, touch game? We don't care, we'll put it on the service. And what we'll do for the user is we'll tell them which games work with which controllers. But really, if the developer wants to touch enable it, that's up to them, and we'll just make that work. So we eliminated the porting costs. We're down to a single SKU because it's the same SKU you're already selling. We're enhancing the existing channels, so you don't have to think, am I cannibalizing anymore? You're selling the game, and then we're building incremental revenue on top of that for you through other monetization methods like subscriptions or in-app purchases. So again, it's about simplifying. It was about all of those learnings that we'd taken before and realizing we have to stop making this difficult. We have to make this easy for every part of the chain to make this work. So now we take DTO games. We sell keys, but really we don't care if you've bought the key from anywhere else. That means that we can build new partnerships. That means we can work with companies in the retail space who are selling the games, and then we give another offering to build on top of it. The service for them is, when they look at it, they're extending the reach, so they're opening up new platforms. Maybe they haven't done the Mac port yet, so it's an opportunity to get that out and running. It's an opportunity to bring it to low-end devices, or maybe to bring it to markets that don't have advantage for all of these high-end games. Internet cafes, new territories, where we can just launch. We've taken the game, and we don't have to think about all of those difficult problems of how do we get it into those different places. The free-to-play in the MMO world, we scratched our head for a long time on that one. And then, once we were able to just take the existing game, we didn't have to build an alternate version of it. We didn't have to think about that problem anymore. We can just build, here's a service that's a benefit to you. Do you want to play War Thunder at lunchtime on your desktop at work? Great, we can now do that for you. And the free-to-play model still works. All of the in-app purchases are there. The publisher, the developer of the game still gets all of their traditional monetization. And what we're doing is incrementing that. We're giving them more ways to play. We're giving them more access to that content. And we're now extending the reach of it again. We're also able to now do the try before you buy. We're looking at a free-to-play with an 8 gigabyte download that requires high-end hardware. That's quite a large barrier to jump through. You're asking someone to put all of this down, make sure their drivers are all good, make sure their hardware is good, and at the end of it, they're not even sure they want to play this game. That's a big leap to make. Here's an easy way to just go in, try the game. So again, that's new marketing models. That's new ways of bringing it to new territories. Again, new ways to look at it as a way to play without worrying about all of the other associated bits. But having got there and said, I love this game, I want this experience, now you're prepared to download it. Now you're prepared to put the time and energy into putting it onto the best gaming rig you possibly have. So the partnerships have become really important. By making all of these things easier, it's become really good for us because we now go to the publishers and they say to us, well, why wouldn't we do this? We now have the Take-Twos, we have the Segas, we have the Warner Brothers, we have the high-end content that's going to come out day and date release. We have the opportunity to take these games and push them at the same time as everybody else is pushing them, which means we get to take advantage of all of the marketing channels as well. We're part of that ecosystem now. We're now able to just take those activities that are already happening and drive them out there. The hardware is evolving, and hardware at the back end and hardware at the front end. We have the relationships with the TV manufacturers, with the device manufacturers like Mad Catz and WikiPad, with Philips. We have the Android ecosystem. And then at the back end, we're seeing the evolution of the hardware. When we first built this 4, 5, 6 years ago, we were building essentially games rigs in the cloud. We had to take the GPUs, the CPUs, we had to create our own metalwork, we had to create our own hardware, servers, everything. And now what we're seeing is the likes of NVIDIA building solutions for this. They're solving the problem. And we're a platform, we're the middleware. Our strength comes from how we manage these games, how we onboard them, how we solve for the end user. So having someone else solving the hard back-end pieces for us is brilliant, because that's an area that we now don't have to worry about. So we just get to go and buy these off-the-shelf solutions and start implementing them instead. That moves into hybrid clouds, it moves into public clouds. We can do that with an Azure. We can start to look at how to take what we've built and move it into their world and say, there's our elasticity. One of the problems in the old days of having bespoke hardware has now gone away, because now, again, simplify, use the other infrastructures and architectures that are out there where it makes sense, and focus on our core competencies. And the retailers, we were always competing with retailers in the past. Now, the retailers have solutions that complement them. They can sell the games, they can continue to drive and monetize those parts, they can continue to market them. And now we can take advantage of that and we can promote back to them as well. And we can work within their social networks as well, where they have rewards points, where they have ways of recirculating within their users, and we can build that into our solution that then feeds back into theirs. So they're incented to work with us just as we're incented to work with them. And again, from a customer acquisition standpoint, that means we're partnering with people. We're driving those relationships, and you're going to hear more and more on that over the next couple of months. So this is what we're doing today. This isn't speculative, this is where we're at. We're on all of these devices now. If you have a Philips TV, you can download us from the Play Store. From next month, you'll see it pre-installed on all of those devices. We work on Mojo, we work on the WikiPad, we work across Android, we work across Macs and PCs. These are just a start of the products we're building out. And it's there today, now, and happening. And this is from the lessons learned. This is us proving that having come through this the first time, we now know how to build, and we now know how to make it a good business as well. Not just a good product that's cool technology and everyone looks at, but here's a solution that people actually want. And we're seeing that reflected in our customer acquisition now. We're seeing the companies that are coming to us wanting to work with us, and they want to build out these solutions, and they're excited about it because we're taking them new places with our technology, and they're taking us with their businesses. This is just on the game side. We've evolved to the point where, because we've moved away from this bespoke hardware, because we've moved away from a solution that was in the past so difficult to onboard, the enterprises are phoning us. We've announced recently in the background partnerships with companies like Harris. These are all just calling us up and saying, you're solving a problem that hadn't been solved before. Come and solve it for us. So we're pretty happy about where the world's going. This is really just what I've just been talking about. Everything was about simplification. We had to stop being a barrier. We had to stop game publishers coming to us and saying, It costs $25,000 to onboard a game. Are we ever going to see that revenue back? Why do you need the source code? Who is you going to market this to? What's your customer acquisition strategy? All of that, simplification. Hardware, stop building everything from scratch. Work out where there's existing solutions. Take advantage of those solutions. Make use of them. We want to build a platform wherever people want that platform. If somebody comes to us and says, we would like to build this in China, we would like to build this in South America, well, we're now ready to do that. We're now ready to move into those markets with the partners because we're now able to bifurcate our platform and move it to the different places. We have all of these networks that are evolving. Doesn't need to be fiber to the home. We're quite happy with copper, thank you. But they're all going to get faster, and they're now at that point. And so, for those of you that follow the Gartner type analysis of things, this is where we believe we're on the curve. And we're at that state of enlightenment, which all sounds lovely. Thank you.
Any questions?